What is going on, everybody? James Hancock here, and back to offer my spoiler-free review of Season 1 of Reacher, coming to Amazon on February 4th. The season's 8 episodes total, and on the whole, it's a pretty faithful adaptation of the first book in Lee Child's series, Killing Floor, which was published back in 1997. For those who don't know, Lee Child has written 25 books featuring the character Jack Reacher over the years, along with tons of novellas and short stories. If you're unfamiliar with the character, Reacher's this mysterious drifter who wanders through the United States, but who frequently finds himself in situations where his military experience and brilliant investigative skills can be put to the best use. I've only read Killing Floor, which I have right here, which I read over the last few weeks, but there's so little going on in the world of film and television right now that gets my juices flowing that I was happy to check out the book in preparation for this review. Plus, a buddy of mine, Nick Berry, has been a fan of the series for years, so I was long overdue in giving it a read. I've been hearing for a long time that readers of the series had their fair share of issues with the two Tom Cruise Jack Reacher movies, so I figured my review of this new show would be more useful to folks if I knew a little bit more about what the hell I was talking about. I only saw the first Jack Reacher movie from 2012, the one directed by Christopher McQuarrie, and while I thought the movie was fine, and I love seeing Werner Herzog and Robert Duvall in the same movie, nonetheless, that 2012 movie kind of feels like a warm-up for the later collaborations between Christopher McQuarrie and Tom Cruise, Mission Impossible Rogue Nation, and Mission Impossible Fallout, which I found to be vastly superior to the 2012 Jack Reacher. But over the years, the most consistent complaint that I always heard about the movies was that in the books, Jack Reacher is just this giant human being, and Tom Cruise is about 3 feet tall. Admittedly, he's one of the craziest actors on the planet and happy to perform death-defying stunts, even though he's nearly 60 years old. But here's what Lee Child had to say a few years ago about the movies versus this new show. I really enjoyed working with Cruise. He's a really, really nice guy. We had a lot of fun, but ultimately, the readers are right. The size of Reacher is really, really important, and it's a big component of who he is. So what I've decided to do is, there won't be any more movies with Tom Cruise. Instead, we're going to take it to Netflix or something like that. Long-form streaming television with a completely new actor. We're rebooting and starting over, and we're going to try and find the perfect guy. First and foremost, I can't tell you how refreshing it is seeing a storyteller really trying his best to deliver film and television that an existing audience will like. In today's entertainment landscape, we see far too many shows and movies basically buying a brand name and then throwing out everything that made that concept cool in the first place. The biggest goal of this new show seems to be to launch an ongoing series that the existing fans will totally embrace. Which brings us to this new show starring Alan Ritchson, a giant human being who folks will recognize from shows like Titans. The dude is just jacked as hell. His muscles pop and flex, even when he's doing something as simple as cutting into a slice of peach pie. So hopefully Reacher's longtime fans will be pleased with this casting decision. As an actor, I don't think he's necessarily going to be recruited by the Royal Shakespeare Company to perform Hamlet anytime soon, but I find him to be likable as hell. He's got a great sense of humor. And in terms of his career, he might have finally found the perfect vehicle to show off what he brings to the table, namely a physique that looks like it was carved out of marble, which gets shown off pretty much every single episode. And by some strange coincidence, Alan Ritchson looks like a younger, buffer version of the author, Lee Child. But the show is developed by Nick Santora, a writer who's worked on shows like The Sopranos, Law & Order, and Prison Break. And along with his writing staff, he appears to have done everything in his power to get this show off to a strong start. If you've seen the trailer, the show hits the ground running when Reacher's arrested in the small town of Margrave, Georgia. He's charged with murder, thrown in jail, fights off an attempt on his life, and ultimately decides to stick around in order to find out who the true murderers are so that he can eventually put the smackdown on all of them with his signature brand of ass-kicking justice. Along for the ride are all the central characters from the book. We've got Malcolm Goodwin, who plays Finley, the Harvard-educated chief detective from Boston, who happens to be black, making him a very odd fit for his surroundings in rural Georgia, as well as a great study in contrast with Reacher. And we also have Roscoe, played by Willa Fitzgerald, who looks sexy as hell in uniform and is easily one of the best ingredients in the show. And together, these three actors have to take on the bad guys who have our heroes seriously outnumbered. But I can't really get into what the bad guys are up to without dropping some massive spoilers, many of which are unveiled in the first episode. But as far as the rest of the cast goes, keep an eye out for Bruce McGill, who's always good, particularly in Michael Mann movies, as well as Harvey Guillen, who people will recognize as Guillermo from What We Do in the Shadows. The big question, though, for every Reacher fan is going to be, did they get it right? I can't speak for the people who've been loyal readers for a quarter century, but here's what I'll say. The show tries really hard to nail the tone and the style of the book with many, many scenes that are basically copied and pasted right from the book. The show has to zig and zag a bit in order to squeeze in some obligatory action every single episode, basically by adding a few extra good deeds by Reacher around town. And there are a few tweaks to minor characters and one major tweak with the central villain. But if you enjoyed Killing Floor, you will enjoy the show. For my part, I really enjoyed the book and found it to be an incredibly relaxing reading experience, in spite of being over 500 frickin' pages long. But it's the kind of book that when you're finished, it should be waterlogged and covered in sand and suntan lotion after chipping away at it over the course of the summer. It is a genuine bestseller page-turner, and I don't think Lee Child is on the level of a writer like Elmore Leonard, but he's clearly doing his damnedest to give his reader some very entertaining and tasty empty calories. And with 8 episodes to work with, most of the best scenes from the book make it into the show. But in my heart, I'm always more of a movie guy, and I can't help but wonder if the story would have been tighter and more economical as a flick. But we live in the era of shows, and I will absolutely return for season 2 if we get one, and I'll happily read whatever book that new season might be based on. Also, for any Reacher fanatics out there, please leave some recommendations in the comments below on the best books in the series. As far as criticisms go, my one real critique is that there are too many scenes from other characters' point of view. Killing Floor is a first-person book with every single scene unfolded from Reacher's perspective, where we get to hear his inner thoughts and his observations. And it works great on the page with a story like this, but my understanding is that some of the later books switched to third person. In any event, I found myself losing interest in plenty of scenes where Reacher was off doing his thing, leading to a few episodes feeling less eventful than others. The show also gives us some flashbacks to Reacher's childhood that might come from later books, I don't know, but they're pretty weak in the context of this show. That said, episode 1 is absolutely killer, basically cramming in the first 150 pages of the book, ending with this really kick-ass cliffhanger. Episode 4 is something special if you have a crush on Roscoe like I do and enjoy listening to the blues. And the last 2 episodes seriously deliver on the action with a few modifications to the climax that I found to be an improvement over the book. But if you really like that scene in the rain at Hubble's house, which was my favorite from the book, they pretty much nailed it. And if you're concerned that the material's been defanged and declawed for Amazon, don't be. The violence is just as in your face as in the book. When Reacher grabs someone across the mouth before stabbing them repeatedly in the back or like sawing away at their throat, the show leans all the way in, making the audience absolutely feel it in their bones. And most of the seriously disgusting details from the book's many torture sequences have all made the cut as well. But in the final analysis, this is a show for folks who like police procedurals. Reacher has the rank of major in the Army's military police, so he's basically a super detective on steroids, but a lot of the plot is all about the characters going over clues, gathering evidence, essentially expository dialogue. That's not necessarily my favorite cup of tea, but I get that there are a lot of people out there who eat this shit up, and I genuinely, sincerely hope these fans are going to be happy, and I'll be rooting hard for this show to get another season. But I think that's all I have for now. Hope you enjoyed this review. If so, please remember to like, subscribe, and hit the bell to be notified for future content. Thanks so much for listening, but more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.